Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Alright, so I was able to do a live segment last night, so I'm hoping that still remains true right now. So we're going to try this. Soapbox? Yes, I have sound. Everything looks green on my end, so I am going to assume that I am on. So yesterday, Donald Trump does a speech at the UN. This is supposed to be the president of the United States. He's out there representing us, the United States, being belligerent, openly hostile, threatening one nation after the next. It's like a bully in high school. I'm going to see you at 3 p.m. tonight. That's going to be your ass, buddy. It was embarrassing. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. It was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. America is essentially using force, showing this kind of snarled fist to the rest of the world. The thing is, here's the catch. You have to appreciate a certain amount of honesty to it. It is how we interact with the world in general. We are pretty hostile with regards to the rest of the world. So in that case, Donald Trump was just being honest. He was being the representation of what this country actually is, not necessarily, you know, the corporatized face of somebody who's pleasant, like an Obama or somebody else of that ilk. So that's the first point. I did the video yesterday with him just going after North Korea, going after them, balls out, calling the man Rocket Man, joking the guy, and all this other stuff. Today I want to talk about the conversation he had with regards to Iran. I found it, look, this speech is amazing. Like I said, I've said before, this speech is absolutely amazing. I want to talk about the politics of the speech after this, but just for the moment, let's listen to Donald Trump. I hope this goes okay. The moment that I run this, I don't want it to start freezing up and everything else. And if it does, I'll just end this and do it and push it up. Let's take a look. Let's see this.
It is far past time for the nations of the world to confront another reckless regime, one that speaks openly of mass murder, vowing death to America, destruction to Israel, and ruin for many leaders and nations in this room. The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. It has turned a wealthy country with a rich history and culture into an economically depleted rogue state whose chief exports are violence, bloodshed, and chaos.
Who is he talking about? Now, you know he's talking about Iran, but be honest. Be very honest about this. Everything that Donald Trump said there applies to us. Everything. There's a certain amount of irony with a president of the United States complaining that this other state is being hostile while he's just talking about saying he was going to destroy another country. That's weird. That's bizarre. And yet that is what has taken place. Now he's moved on to Iran, and he's making these overtures, this rogue state, this masking of democracy, this... Iran is run by a Shah. There is a democracy, but it's run by a Shah. The main decisions, the last say of things, is run by a Shah. Fair enough. The president of the United States who's throwing that stone, however, is in a country that only has 2 parties. You have one more party. Good job. Those 2 parties, for the most part, agree on the way things are. So if you have a 2-party system that, for the most part, agrees on the way things are, how are you saying you don't have a leg to stand on? Yes, this is somewhat a religious thing. I get it. The Shah is a religious leader in that case. That's fair enough. He has the last say. But you have a 2-party country, a representative government that in no way represents the people who it says it represents. The 2 most hated candidates in the history of this country became the candidates that the people had to choose from. When you look at the actual policy decisions, the legislation that gets passed, it has nothing to do with what the public wants. It has nothing to do with what the public wants. It has everything to do with who's paying these guys. I understand Donald Trump is throwing that stone saying, well, hey, those guys are a religious theocracy. But ultimately, we're the same way. Yes, it masks a democracy. Yes, it pretends as if you have representative government and all this other stuff. But ultimately, everyone understands that it boils down to cash. Who's paying them? At the end of the day, who's cashing those checks? If the legislative will, understand, if the legislative will of the people in that government, in that country, is not being expressed through the political apparatus, then how are you throwing that stone? How are you throwing that stone? You may not necessarily have a religious Shah at the top of the pyramid in America, but you do have cash at the top of that pyramid. The things that the people do, the policies that these guys push, has everything to do with who's paying them. It has nothing to do with the people who's actually voting. Let's be honest. Yes, that's a theocracy. But you're also an oligarchy. And with Donald Trump in that office, a kleptocracy. So, no, that's not a stone you can throw. Whether you're ruled by religion or whether you're ruled by cash, you're still ruled by something other than what the public wants. Let's keep going. It's what he's saying here applies to us. Understand, he's throwing a stone, but what he's saying here applies to us. This is massively shameless. Those other countries full well understand that Donald Trump is full of shit on this point, and they full well understand that what he's saying applies to us. We are a rogue state. The United States takes itself as being a single superpower around the globe that it can do whatever it wants. There is no legislative, nothing has been passed that has given the president the authority to go from country to country to country, bombing one place after the next. Nothing. He takes it upon himself to do it. Congress abdicates its responsibility, so the president at that point becomes a king and invades one country after the next, bombing and killing. The majority of the people that we bomb and kill are civilians. They're civilians. If we are really having this conversation with an American president who's running a drone war program, killer robots flying overhead, dropping bombs and murdering civilians, if this is the president that's making this case and he's talking about Iran being a rogue state, come on, dude. Come on. When you take that poll around the globe and you say, who's the state sponsor of terror? Who's the country, the rogue government? That's us. That's us. Just one last point. The United States and Saudi Arabia formed somewhat of a pact. We will protect you, providing you give us oil. That pact has stayed in effect for the last 60 years. You have a regime that exports terror all throughout that region of the globe. The Pentagon knows it. The administration, meaning the governance apparatus, knows it. In the WikiLeaks documents, Hillary Clinton made note that Saudi Arabia was a state sponsor of terror. It's understood. It's known. It is ignored. It is completely ignored. They're our buddies. I don't care if they chop heads off. I don't care if they have crucifixion. I don't care if they're a religious country. I am throwing a stone at this other place saying that they have a democracy or they have a fake democracy. But we're okay with Saudi Arabia. Oh, that doesn't even come up. There is no issue here. Donald Trump will go there and dance and shake and do all this other stuff. But they're going to throw stones at Iran. Saudi Arabia buys our weapons. Even in that speech, that statement right there where he's saying these guys export violence across the world. We export weapons en masse. This is one of our largest things, exports. Weapons, military equipment. That has nothing to do with the weapons that we're shipping into Syria, even though Donald Trump said we're no longer shipping weapons into Syria, sending them through shady outlets and criminal activities. That's us. That's the point I'm trying to make. An American president is getting up here, giving a speech, shamelessly, with a straight face. And the majority of the things that he's saying in his attacks on North Korea and his attacks on Iran apply to us. Let's keep going. This one isn't long. His speech isn't long on here, so let's keep going.
The longest suffering victims of Iran's leaders are in fact its own people. Rather than use its resources to improve Iranian lives, its oil profits go to fund Hezbollah and other terrorists that kill innocent Muslims and attack their peaceful Arab and Israeli neighbors.
This is laughable. This is absolutely laughable. I find this to be amazing. The United States is bombing 8 countries. We have military in 70% of the world. Literally, 70% of the world. And the speech that he has given is talking about Iran being horrible to its neighbors and giving money to terrorists. We were paying terrorists to undermine the Syrian government. What is he talking about? This is an amazing speech. The American public may not know this stuff, but certainly the leaders and the people who are out there full well understand that this guy's full of shit. He is a goddamn buffoon. The American public may not be aware of it, but what he's saying is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. The United States was giving money to undermine the Syrian government, paying terrorists, literally paying terrorists to undermine the Syrian government. He's making a speech talking about Iran giving money to terrorists, and he's wagging his finger at them. How dare you give money to terrorists? At least the terrorists that we, the United States, don't like. Speech is absurd. This speech is utterly absurd. How? This is pissing me off. I gotta be honest. It's aggravating to listen to this. You're talking about a president who's part of a country that gives billions of dollars each year to Israel. Israel is an apartheid state. You can say what you want. I ain't talking about the Israeli government, the policy they have in place. I've been to the country. I've seen it for myself. The people are very nice, but they have an apartheid state. I'm sorry. The United States is putting billions of dollars into that regime. The same thing with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is over there murdering Yemenis. They're murdering Yemenis. We're giving them money and we're giving them weapons. Come on, man. God damn it. Be honest. Be honest. You can be a Trump supporter. You can think this speech is fucking awesome in the sense that Donald Trump is saying America first and you guys can go fuck yourselves. But be honest. At least be honest. At least have this fundamental level of integrity when you're listening to what this guy is saying. And the things that he's saying are utterly absurd because they completely apply to us. They completely apply to us. We don't have a leg to stand on. I can't believe this is the speech that he's making. Can't believe it. Let's keep listening. Trump has had a hard-on about attacking Iran since he's got in that office. One thing after the next. If you look back, there were plenty of news stories with Donald Trump bringing up hay about Iran, talking about the deal itself, trying to find ways to undermine the deal. He's looking for ways to attack Iran. Speech is absolutely absurd. I can't believe he's doing this with a straight face. There's a scene with, I think the guy's name is McMasters or whatever, face planting. President of the United States is speaking and he's perfectly aware of the ridiculousness of this speech. The American public may not. His fans may not. The 30% of the public who thinks he's fucking awesome may think this speech is fucking awesome. I am telling you from a perspective of context, from a perspective of honesty, from a perspective of a person having even an ounce of shame, this speech is horrendous and embarrassing. For the American president to get on the world stage and be belligerent openly, wagging his finger at other countries, threatening other countries, while at the same time bitching and complaining that other countries are threatening him and us. It's amazing. Let's hear the rest of this. I'm not going to do the whole speech, just the part he's talking about Iran. Let's keep going.
This wealth, which rightly belongs to Iran's people, also goes to shore up Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship, fuel Yemen's civil war, and undermine peace throughout the entire Middle East.
Notice, none of these things are talking about us, right? He's not talking about Iran attacking us. He's pissed that Iran has a temerity to help out some forces in Yemen. That has nothing to do with us. That has everything to do with Saudi Arabia. It has nothing to do with us. All of the stuff that he's talking about has nothing to do with us. What it does have to do with us is we put money and weapons and we pay terrorists to try to undermine certain regimes that we don't particularly like. Terrorists are fucking awesome when they're working on the outside. If you're working against us, then yes, we're going to complain about terrorists and terrorism. We have no issue with Saudi Arabia exporting terrorism throughout their region of the world. We hate it that Iran may be paying somebody else who's on the other side of that conflict. This is an amazingly ridiculous speech. Let's go to the next part of that speech. They've wasted their wealth on weapons instead of on the Iranian people. We are spending $1 trillion on our military. Are you shitting me? $1 trillion. Now, the budget was what, 800 million or something like that, billion, but that doesn't take into account the money that's gone through black sites or black projects, or money that's worked in other areas that still end up in the military's pocket. The military lost $5 trillion that it can't account for. $5 trillion with the T. With the T. They give them $1 trillion a year to go hunt people down in caves and murder people abroad. We're having this conversation over whether or not people in this country should get health care. Put that in context. He's complaining that Iran is wasting the wealth of that nation while right now spending over $1 trillion in the military and losing $5 trillion, meaning the Pentagon doesn't necessarily know where the money went. We're talking about health care. We're quibbling over whether or not the Americans are worthy of having health care. We're having conversations over whether or not Americans should be able to go to school, over infrastructure, whether or not we should spend the wealth of America, as Donald Trump would say, on actual Americans, as opposed to wasting it on military endeavors. I just find the speech to be amazing. It's immensely aggravating to listen to this. I'm embarrassed on first point because that's the President of the United States. And whatever I may think of Donald Trump, I still see myself as an American. I'm a citizen of this world, but culturally, emotionally, I am an American. What I'm seeing is this guy who's supposed to be representing us buffoonishly giving a speech. That each and every person who's sitting in that room understands the ridiculousness of that speech. That is an embarrassing moment. Let's hear the rest. I mean, I find this to be amazing that he's having this conversation about spending the wealth of their nation. And just one last point on this. Iran is run by a Shah. I wonder, does Donald Trump know why there's a Shah in Iran? It wasn't always that way. They used to be a secular republic. When that government, that open society, when that government wanted to use the oil revenue for its own interests, it was time to give them some freedom. In which case, Britain and the United States or the CIA worked in coordination to topple that government. Now, the United States has a history of toppling governments that it didn't like, and they were concerned that they were going to take the oil away from us. So they toppled that democracy. They put in a Shah, a brutal Shah. Eventually, the people were able to get rid of that Shah, and the person who took office was Khomeini. What is it? Khomeini. I may be pronouncing her name wrong. But essentially, the person who took over was a religious leader. That's the guy who's there now. When you hear them talking about bombing Iran and attacking Iran, part and parcel to that is that they were pissed that they got rid of the Shah, that the strong man that the United States put in that position. They were pissed. How dare you get rid of the strong man, that brutal dictator that we put in that country? We hate the fact that you're trying to determine your own way, determine your own government. This is an embarrassing speech. Let's hear the rest of it.
We cannot let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me.
You've just heard the President of the United States essentially talk openly about undermining a nuclear deal, essentially a deal among other nations. Now, the United States often doesn't keep its deals. It doesn't keep its arrangements. So that's not necessarily shocking that a president may try to undo it. But to do it this clumsily, this openly, we're openly trying to find ways to unravel this deal because we think, whatever, we want to have a pretext to attack you. And the problem is we have a deal in place. So we're going to look for reasons and justifications to get rid of this deal. Now, take that perspective for the moment and look into the issue of North Korea. If you're in North Korea and you see a deal that the United States made, and the United States is not going to live up to that deal, and the United States is looking for each and every pretext that it can to try to unravel that deal and attack that country, what would you as North Korea believe of the United States? What would you believe of the United States? You saw what happened to Iran. You saw what happened to Libya. You saw what happened to Syria. You saw what happened to one nation after the next that the United States essentially set on fire. And now the President of the United States, a deal that was supposed to be struck between nations, openly trying to find a way to get rid of it. There are consequences for this. I mean, whether you realize it or not, how a country perceives the United States and whether or not this country is going to live by its agreements is rather important. How can you have any deal whatsoever with North Korea if North Korea in no way believes that the United States will keep its arrangements? Because it didn't before. The one thing that North Korea knows that the United States can't do shit about is the fact that it already has a nuclear weapon. And that if anything happens to North Korea, meaning if the United States attacks North Korea, it's going to immediately attack Japan. It's going to immediately attack Seoul. You're going to have millions of people die within the first 30 minutes. There's no military solution to North Korea. No good one, anyway. But now you can't trust the word of the President of the United States. So where's the political solution when neither party trusts the other? I would say listen to his speech in total. Look, there is one part of speech that needs to be discussed. I would imagine at a certain part of the speech, Trump makes this unabashed growl of a country representing itself, meaning America first. And he makes that case vociferously, unabashedly, like nailing it home, this idea that nations need to take care of nations' interests. Now, that's language. So that language is somewhat sketchy. There's no way to know what that means. Each person is going to take that information and do with it what they will. They process that information in the way they process it. Who the hell knows what Trump means when he says that stuff? I don't even know if Trump knows what he means. Somebody may be writing his speeches for him. But there's an aspect of that. Like this strong screaming of America, at the top of your lungs, got ripping his shirt off, just America. Yeah, I would imagine that would play pretty well with your base. Now, even the other parts, this kind of beating its chest type thing, may actually play well with his base, particularly if his base doesn't know what the hell America does around the globe. But the America first part, I suspect that's going to play well. If we're talking about trade deals and stuff like that, then yes, I even agree with that particular portion if we're talking about trade deals. But I have no idea what Donald Trump is talking about. His America first can mean all sorts of things. It's language, it's slippery. But I would imagine that the language itself will play extraordinarily well with his base. So, we'll see. It's not going to play well with the rest of the world. He's going to look belligerent as all hell. So I will leave it at that. I'll put a link to the speech at the bottom. I'll also put a link to some of the articles on some of the stuff said. This toppling of the democracy, this 90% of the people being murdered are civilians, shipping weapons to Syria, all sorts of stuff. I mean, The speech is just fundamentally amazing. You have a two-party system, completely controlled by cash. The viability of a candidate is often determined by how much money they can raise, how much can they be bribed. That's our country. And we're talking about a representative democracy. Legislatively, what the people want in no way affects what takes place with regards to law. Now, if Donald Trump is going to get out there and give a speech and he's going to wag his finger at some other country saying they have the sham of the democracy, and your political apparatus in no way deals with the issues that are affecting the public itself, you can't wag your finger, dude. You can't say shit about it. You have a two-party system, and both of those parties, for the most part, fundamentally agree on the same thing. They agree on the way things are. They quibble over minor distinctions, but ultimately they agree on the way things are. I'm making a point that that is not all that different than having some kind of religious leader at the helm of the country. In your case, or our case, we have cash at the top of that pyramid. How much are these guys getting paid? You have an oligarchy. How much are they getting paid? I'm giving you this much money. I need you to toe this particular line. And as a politician, you need to come up with language to convince people that what you're saying and the line that you're towing is something that is politically feasible. They're public relations experts. You're being paid to do a job. Go out there and get those votes and get that legislation passed. It's going to be in my best interest, but convince those people that it's in theirs interest also. That is not a democracy. That in no way represents democracy. That looks nothing like anything of a representative republic. Nothing at all. Alright, I will leave it at that. I hope this video came out okay. I know before I was having like shaky issues and all this other stuff. Let's see. Isn't it fucked that we're willing to put Seoul or Japan under attack? It's not we, it's them. I mean, yes, it's us. It's, you know, it's government of sorts. Here's the thing, man. You had the choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And God knows that's not a choice. Let's be honest, that's not a choice. Ultimately, one person, Hillary Clinton, thought it was going to be perfectly awesome to put a weapons defense shield in Syria, meaning shooting down either a Russian jet or Syrian jet, which would immediately trigger a war with a nuclear-powered nation. She was a maniac. She's a neocon. She was going to start you into a war right off the bat. Or at the very least, I was terrified that Hillary Clinton was going to start a war. With Donald Trump, he talked a big game, but that was mostly Bannon with this idea of non-interventionists. You were stuck with this choice between somebody who was going to start a war in one country or somebody who was going to start a war in another country. Those were your choices. You had the choice for somebody different. That person was hit in the knees and cheated. The person who you ended up with was Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. The public did not want another establishment politician. They had 8 years of one. Hillary Clinton was going as Obama 2.0. And the audience said, no. No, we don't like that woman. I don't care if he was grabbing women by the pussy. No, I don't care if he's a buffoon. I don't care if he's a liar. At the very least, he's not like the others. Yeah, Iran is trying to switch from the petrodollar, but it's not just Iran. You're talking about China also. China and Russia is trying to find ways to get around this idea of the dollar. You know, Gaddafi, when he switched from the petrodollar, he was actually going around the American dollar also. And all of a sudden, he needed freedom. He needed freedom. It's amazing. The DNC is responsible for Trump being in that office. That's true. You have, because understand the situation. Democrats have lost everything. House, Senate, Supreme Court, 66 of 99 state legislatures. They've lost everything across the board. But when you ask people, when you poll people for information and you say, would you prefer Medicare for all or would you prefer the Republicans' plan? Republican ideas are ghastly. They're ghastly. They're not something where people are like, yes, these ideas are fucking awesome. Democrats just lose. There's a difference in those things. It's not a situation where Republicans just beat the stuffing out of whatever the Democrat did. No, Democrats just lose. They just lose. Tell me what you stand for. If the Republican tells me something that he stands for and he's being honest about it, and he may be ghastly, but at least he's being honest about it, and you have this wishy-washy Democrat who doesn't necessarily know what he represents, they're going to take the guy who knows what he stands for. Yappa, do I think Bernie Sanders will run again? He broke my heart, but I would give him another chance. I like that. So the last article that came out about that, Bernie Sanders was thinking about running in 2020 because he didn't necessarily want Biden to take his spot. The article kind of made the point that Sanders believes that he earned it. He earned his chance to run again. So he's going to have some age on him. So I don't know. I mean, he may be one of those things of kingmaker of, this is the person who I want. This is my, this is the, I'm giving my vote to this particular guy. I'm Bernie Sanders. It may be something like that. Or he may decide to run again. I don't know. I would vote for him again. I would vote for him again. I know that's not a popular opinion, but fuck it. That's my opinion. I'd vote for him again. We need a real progressive. Yes. Well, step away from the label for the moment. What you're talking about is you want a person with integrity. You essentially want somebody who goes into their office and says, I'm going to represent the interests of the public. That's what you're looking for. That's what people in general are looking for, and that's what they're not getting. And so when they don't get that, there's a thought that anytime a strong man gets in, it's due to a failure on the left. Like there was some revolution that needed to take place that didn't take place. It was like a stall. It died in this crib of sorts, in which case you get these kind of ghoulish figures like Donald Trump. So, alright, I am going to call this a day. I'm getting tired and I'm starving. So, I hope this went okay. I've been itching to do this video because I swear, man, that speech is amazing. Yeah, that speech is amazing and not in a good way. So, check out the whole speech and I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, write, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the work through Patreon. Night guys, night capitalism. Bye bye.